Hello and welcome to Destination Digest, the first ever episode from Destination North East England and England's first ever Destination Development Partnership pilot. And I think I win all of the prizes for getting the word destination in there a million times, and we're barely 15 seconds into the show. We'll be going over what exactly is the Destination Development Partnership in just a little bit. We're also going to be doing a deep dive into some of the latest data and intelligence that's affecting the visitor economy right here in the North East. And we'll be doing that with my guest on this week's episode, which is Ian Thomas, the Director of Visitor Economy at NewcastleGateshead Initiative and one of the leads on the Destination Development Partnership pilot. Hello, Ian.
Afternoon, Johnny.
I think that's now 7 times I said the word destination, which is pretty good going. So let's kind of address that elephant in the room then. First of all, anyone that's new to the Destination Development Partnership, to Destination North East England, what's it all about and why are we here today recording this podcast?
Now I've got to try and avoid the word destination, which is going to be an impossibility. But look, I think we're in a really fortunate position here in the North East in the fact that we were awarded the Destination Development Partnership pilot by government, what feels like both years ago and 5 minutes ago at the same time. But what that was a reaction to the Dubois Review into tourism in structures in England. They wanted to kind of really focus and work with a selected number of bodies across the country, moving us from 240 destination management organisations to around 40 local visitor economy partnerships, and then to have a kind of more collective approach to tourism, which was the Destination Development Partnerships. Government awarded a pilot. The North East put forward its best foot and best case, as we always do. And over the last 2.5 years, we've been getting on with delivering that pilot activity. And I'm sure we'll touch on some of the work we've been doing through that in this podcast. But I think for all those listening, the one thing you need to think about at the heart of this is making our businesses more profitable and helping them with their resources, but more importantly, making this region an even better place to visit.
And we were kind of saying before, it's the Destination Development Partnership really has been a bit of a precursor to devolution and the new deal that we've now got here in the North East, getting everyone to work together for that one collective goal, singing off the same hymn sheet. And we've already proven that that's been quite successful through the work of the DDP.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there'll be people listening who've been around long enough to remember the Regional Development Agency, and certainly a few of us worked at the RDA. And I think this is the first time we've had a really true collective approach to tourism since 2010. And I think the fact we have 7 local authorities, 3 local visitor economy partnerships in the region, all working together to really focus on their efforts on the visitor economy has been really important. I think that came through in one key area, which was to see the visitor economy written into that devolution deal. I don't think any other region had seen that. I think it really demonstrated the importance of this sector. Coming out of COVID and people realising how much they missed those days out and missed those trips away, I think the visitor economy has become a real mainstay of not just the region's ambitions, but the country's ambitions.
And I mentioned we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into data in just a little bit. We'll start going over those figures soon and why they're important for the North East. But just to give you an overview of how this podcast is going to work, every single episode is going to focus on a different key area for Destination North East England, whether that is regenerative tourism and sustainability, whether that is accessibility and inclusion, product development. Of course, this week is going to be on data. What I will say is as well, this industry, as I've quickly found out over the last 6 months, loves an acronym. Loves a bit of jargon. So I feel like I should have like a button where I press it's like jargon alert. So we will try and demystify some of that as well. And feel free to call each other out if we do just slip into a bit of an acronym or a bit of jargon there. So first we should probably say what an LVEP is really, which is Local Visitor Economy Partnership. That is the kind of the new name for what were called DMOs, Destination Marketing Organisations. So there will be a lot of that as we go on, and we'll try and demystify that.
I did my best to avoid it. I think I gave a couple of them, but yeah, we'll do our best to avoid them.
Fab. So let's dive into the data then, because you've spent a large part of your career in research, looking at data, crunching the numbers and trying to use that data to influence policy and influence the direction of travel for the region. What have been the biggest surprises or the most interesting nuggets that you've seen over the years where you're like, actually, that was completely unexpected, or that is really quite interesting. We didn't think that would be a case for the North East?
Wow, it's what a question to start. I think, look, as you say, I started my career in research too many years ago to think about, really. And I think probably the best nugget is when people start to listen to the data, when they actually take notice of it. I think that's when you really feel that change, when all of a sudden a marketing campaign or product development is based on that data and evidence. And I think over the last 10 years, kind of not just tourism, you only have to look at some of the big organizations and how much they spend on insight and data and how important that has come. Have a look at Amazon, have a look at eBay. It's all data driven now. I think if we were getting into kind of what that data means and where have we learned things from, there's a couple of things that I kind of remember picking out over my career. Some are qualitative, some are quantitative. One of my favourite things, we did some perceptions research a few years ago, and it was a quote that was in there about the region when one of the kind of visitors described the region as looking like a Skoda from the outside, but driving like a Porsche from the inside. And while the quote was brilliant, I think it really summed up the challenge for the region, that outdated perceptions, outdated awareness. I pretty much wore that quote as a T-shirt for about 2 years because it helped people really understand the job.
Is this your own merchandise range that you've got available at Etsy right now? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other pieces, so as well as doing our research, we do research on behalf of a number of businesses, a number of other organisations, and we did some work for the cultural institutions a couple of years ago around kind of how people had changed their habits coming back into places. And what we really saw was kind of how important the hygiene factors were to people when they were starting to come back out of COVID. And I think we just took it for granted because we saw that kind of desperation to be back out and inside. But everything had changed. Bus routes had changed. Areas had been pedestrianised. People didn't know whether they were wearing masks or weren't. And I think giving the cultural venues that insight and the data they needed to be able to kind of really make decisions and to reassure their visitors was a really important piece of work. And we're going to get into some of the numbers, but actually at that time, it was a really worrying time for cultural institutions because they weren't seeing their audiences coming back. So I think it's moments like that where you just find that little kind of piece within the information. Some of our data sets, I think I actually said this when we did that work, we had something like 17,500 pieces of data in that research, but we took those 4 and they're the things that made the key difference, essentially.
And it's amazing, isn't it, what that can unlock? And you know, sometimes when you're running a business, even if it's a big business and you're kind of in charge of making sure that you're keeping things ticking over and that you're attracting audiences back, particularly after such an unsettling time, you know, sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees, and it's that data and that insight that can kind of unlock stuff.
And I think the other part in that, and we see this a lot more now, is people just listening to their teams on the ground. They're collecting this data all the time. And if you're on front of house or you're a volunteer in a venue, visitors are going to be telling you how they feel about what's going on in there. And I think we don't necessarily always think about that as data or as research or as insight, but it's equally as important.
So let's dive into those figures a little bit now then. So we recently released the STEAM data. Don't ask me what STEAM stands for because I can't remember off the top of my head. Scarborough Tourism Economic Activity Monitor. There we go. I knew you would know. That is basically a huge kind of bit of research that goes into figuring out like visitor behaviours and how people are visiting the region, how long for, where they're going, all of that sort of stuff. And there were some really positive figures for the Northeast. You know, we've seen the figures heading in the right direction, but it also does demonstrate how far we've got to go as well. Yeah. So let's have a look at the main headline figure first of all. 69 million visitors, a 5% increase on 2022. I said they were heading in the right direction. Are we heading in the right direction? And is that a positive figure?
I think we are heading in the right direction. And actually, if you start to get under the skin of that a little bit, we've still got slightly less visitors than we had pre-COVID, but those visitors are now spending more. So from a regenerative tourism point of view, from a sustainability point of view, less visitors spending more is actually quite a healthy position to be in. And we've seen a really good kind of recovery of the overnight visitor market to the region. And I'm sure we'll kind of pick on some of that a little bit later, but I think we are definitely heading in the right trajectory. Is it as quick as I'd like? Probably not. I think we would very much like to maybe kind of be to seeing that figure at double figures, so 10% kind of growth. But I think what we've done in the last couple of years, and a lot of the work of the Destination Development Partnership pilot, avoided the acronym, Gold Star, was we've laid really good foundations to kind of accelerate this as we move forward. And actually, everyone will have seen this as they're walking around the Northeast. We are on the verge of that period of real growth if you look at all of the investment that's coming into the region. So I think very comfortable with the direction of travel. I think we all work in tourism and we know all of the business, so we always wanted to be quicker and faster and see more. But I think actually, if you were to look for the next 5-6 years, we're in a really, really strong position.
And there's been some standout performances, as there always is in these kind of data sets. Durham in particular did particularly well with their day visits up 13.7%. We kind of attribute that really to a lot of the investment, again, that you mentioned going on in County Durham. A lot more new attractions or additions to existing attractions and what have you. But we've also seen some really good growth in overnight visits, and that's a key target area for the destination in North East England.
You've kind of touched on the Durham thing, but it was what I was inferring to. If you think kind of future investment that we've got in things like the conference centre, what's happening at Newcastle United, what's happening with the TV and production, they're the standout investments. But actually what you've seen in Durham is a real cluster of investments. So Raby Castle and the Rising, Auckland project, Beamish and the fantastic work that they're doing there, Locomotion, I could probably keep naming them, but actually they're in quite close proximity to each other. So what that means for a visitor when you are really thinking about kind of that cost of living crisis, they can be confident they're going to have a really good day out because those things are quite close to each other. So they can plan a day or 2 days away and know they'll have a brilliant time. I think we have to really kind of applaud those who've invested the way they have. A lot of that is private sector investment as well as kind of some public sector. So I think they see the confidence in our visitor economy. That overnight piece, I think, while it was slower, so obviously as we came out of COVID, you saw a real surge in day visits and some of the kind of self-catering breaks to places like Northumberland. We were slower within urban locations like Newcastle, like Sunderland, and then that's gradually grown. And I think obviously these figures are reflective of things like Sam Fender and Pink and the events we had last year. So again, thinking about how do we animate our places over the next decade. We've got the Euros in 2028. We've got some fantastic events still to come this year around the region. We have a brilliant winter programme now right across the region. Some would say the best Christmas anywhere. I think that's how we continue to drive that.
And if we think about like the cost of living crisis, that's been cited in the national statistics as one of the main barriers for people taking an overnight trip domestically. So people are less likely to maybe go on multiple trips a year. They maybe only do one big tentpole trip. So having those big events like Beyonce in Sunderland or a big sporting event or, like you say, the most magical Christmas in the UK, it makes sense to have these things clustered together and a curated programme of things happening to animate an area, because otherwise people are not going to take those trips because those barriers are still in place.
So I think, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bit of that. But even if you kind of looked at kind of now, so I know this Steam data looks back at last year, the Northeast has had the highest growth in occupancy 4 months running. In this year, we're bucking the trend compared to kind of other regions in England. And I think the animation programs are things like Turner, that's kind of currently happening at Lang and some of the other events that are happening around the region. That is one part of it. The other part of this is we're great value for money. You can have the kind of rate in some of our hotels are brilliant for the quality of that offer, but also then when you're here, you've got a number of free museums on your doorstep. You can get to the coast, and I think we offer a great value for money experience is why people are maybe choosing us over other areas. I think we have to recognise that we're talking positively here. It is still tough. It is really tough, both for consumers and for businesses. But I think that's the role of the pilot to support those businesses and to really to kind of push our offer.
You know, and we often say, we mention it in the kind of the news articles that have gone out for the Steam data, that the North East does sit towards the bottom of those league tables nationally. You know, is it helpful that we continue to focus on that and almost compare ourselves to other regions, or do we need to start kind of carving our own path? I'm just curious to know whether that comparison is helpful or not.
I mean, for me, we have to look at that. It puts the fire in your belly a little bit to make sure that we continue to drive that. I think if we looked at our figures in isolation, we might pat ourselves on the back and think job done. There is a long way to go in that job. From an international point of view, London takes 40 times the revenue that we take from international visitors. That is a massive opportunity. It's not a challenge, that is a huge opportunity for the region, because most of those international visitors can probably name two things in the North East, and that's the job we've got to do to put this on their radar. The work we've done to bring tour operators and group travel companies into the region has been a key part of driving that awareness. We've had kind of groups from 18 different countries in the region in the last 12 months to showcase our offer. That shows you how kind of the work that's going into that. We'll be launching campaigns with DFTS to bring more Dutch and German visits. So I think we absolutely have to keep a focus on that. Other regions aren't going to stop investing because the North East is trying to do a better job. They're not here to let us climb up that league table. The only people who can do that is us.
And what do you think is realistic in terms of climbing that league table? Do you think that, you know, we are going to see a big leap, or is it going to be, you know, a long slog?
I think we're at a point of great opportunity with what has happened through devolution. It's brilliant to see the visitor economy being recognised as such an instrumental piece in that. We have to start putting some serious marketing campaign budget behind this and really start to drive people in. We are sandwiched between Scotland, who spend 5, 6, 7, 8 million every year on marketing, the Lake District, which spends money but almost doesn't need to. It's a magnet in its own way, and the Yorkshire Dales and what happens there. So we have to really shout. And actually, if you looked at it a different way, 1/3 of our kind of audience is the sea. So we're also kind of missing a group who could naturally drive in. So I think... what can people expect? I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to bridge that London gap really quickly, because that's just not going to happen. I think what we need to do is work with the national bodies to make sure that the pie gets bigger, and then incrementally grow our slice of that pie. And that is happening because we're doing this collectively rather than kind of 7 voices. We have one voice where we're talking about the region, and we're talking about it from an asset point of view, not a kind of location point of view.
And what's been really beneficial with Destination North East England is that it's allowed us to do a lot of that big scale research, and, you know, the accommodation study, for example, the regenerative framework, and that's been built off a lot of data and research and focus groups and working groups and what have you. So what has all of that research taught you about the region and what we need to do to kind of move forward?
Well, I mean, it teaches us something new all the time, but I think there's some key opportunities that are coming out of there. So, and this is where I try not to kind of revert to type and just talk in numbers and stats, but I think there are some important ones. So we've got a brilliant opportunity with food and drink here in the region. 1 in every £3, if you look at this Steam data, is spent on food and drink, but only 1 in 12 visitors comes because of the food and drink. So how do we change that conversation? As an example, how do we use food and drink as a real driver? We've got more Michelin dining than we've ever had, but kind of go below that, and actually the diversity and the quality of the food offer in this region is second to none. The other great thing about food and drink is it tells the story of a place. It really brings out the authenticity of a place, which I think has a brilliant role to play. What else is the data told us? The accommodation study told us that we have more than 50 developers looking to build kind of hotels, self-catering, campsites in the region. That's their own money. They're not going to be looking here if they don't think there's an opportunity to drive visitors in. So how do we now capture that momentum and get them into the region? The research overwhelmingly tells us all the time we have the most welcoming people, and that's not even our research. You only have to look at which polls and other people's research. We will always come out top.
So you have more call centres than anywhere else.
Exactly. And I think how do we use our people to tell the stories and capture that? I mentioned marketing campaign budget. Sometimes we just need to give our residents the right tools to draw people in. So I think there's things that we can learn from. But I think the one thing, the data that we've collected over the last 12 months, maybe 18 months, has taught me more than anything is, yes, it's challenging, but B, the opportunity is genuinely there. It's not like we're trying to manufacture it. It's not like we're trying to create something that isn't happening. More castles than any other destination. We've got everything. Just people tend to come off the DFDS ferry and turn right or turn left. We just have to show them what's here to stop that kind of leakage from the region, because and it's interesting, I read an article on LinkedIn yesterday, because two of my most hated words in the world are hidden gem, and I think I could retire happily if no one talked about the Northeast as a hidden gem anymore.
Maybe I need another button that's like the hidden gem bleep button. Yeah,
Exactly.
You're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to say it. And I think that is kind of relying on kind of lazy tropes, isn't it? And that's something that the Northeast has struggled with for years from a kind of destination brand perspective. It's that perception that it's stuck out here in the wild north somewhere. It's hard to get to. It's, there's nothing here. Whereas actually we've got a huge amount. We've just never been particularly good at telling that story collectively.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something right at the beginning about that, about the numbers in this. 69 million visitors. If you looked at the stats, 98% of them say they'll either return themselves or they'd recommend the region. They recommended it to one person. That we're up to 120 million. Like, that's job done. That you talk about those seismic changes, that jumps us halfway up that league table. And I think it takes me back to that quote I mentioned about driving like a Porsche. We just need to harness that energy. And I think actually I could, again, it's a shame we're not here all day, because I could list you 100 businesses out there that are doing amazing things, and we really just need to give them the platform that they deserve. Dispel all of the kind of ridiculous kind of perceptions of the region, the ones that still belong in 1984, and really move this forward. And I think, look, we're kind of recording this the day before an election where things will not necessarily change, and we've got another real opportunity to showcase the region. A Labour government that will potentially most likely look at further devolution, further kind of regional, and I think that gives us a brilliant opportunity. Let's get those landmarks down, get the conference centre here, get that film studio built, watch what happens with things like the investment in the football club, and really give this region the platform and the opportunity it deserves.
And one thing we've really found with Destination North East England is that it's kind of gained the region a seat at the table now. We're involved in these really, really high level conversations. We're being invited with government delegations to different places around the world to kind of really sell the North East now. And we've got the data sets to back it up. And I think that's really important, isn't it? That we're not just going there. We've been awarded this pilot, because we wrote some nice words in an application. We actually do have the substance behind it.
And I say this all the time in interview. I mean, you're right, it's seat to the table, be that regional, be that national. If anything, the pilot, I think that's been the biggest benefit of the pilot, having those seats at the table. But we could probably all walk out and say what we feel about the place, or we know we've got a skills challenge, or we know we've got this opportunity. Having the numbers, having the evidence just allows, it's fact. People can't argue with fact. And I think I mentioned those hotel developers, being able to give them not just our occupancy performance now, but to show them that in 3 years' time, we've got this number of TV and film things happening in the region. We've got, this will be built. You've got a conference centre that will attract 1 million extra people. All of us, you can just see their eyes light up. And to have that data and evidence is massively important.
And what are you hoping to see in next year's data set? Because obviously that research doesn't stop. We're constantly kind of gathering these numbers and stuff. We've got our quarterly insights report as well, which is now available at destinationnortheastengland.co.uk. Ka-ching. Always get that little plug in there. But, we're constantly releasing this information, this data. What are you hoping to see, if we sit down and do another one of these next year, for example? What are you hoping to see?
The two things I'm hoping to see. One is, we mentioned the 69 million visitors, but actually probably the more important figure in that is the 6 billion from a value perspective. So I really want to see that ticking towards 6.5 and 6.6, whatever that looks like. We've set ourselves the ambition of getting to 10 billion by kind of 2034. And so we have to see that incremental growth in those value terms. What that will mean to us is that visitors are spending more while they're here, so they're most likely staying longer. And it probably also means we're attracting overnight and international visitors because they tend to spend more. So I think that would say to me all of our indicators are going the right way. One of the other indicators from a data point of view, and I know you'll have a future podcast episode on regenerative tourism, but making sure that we're doing that in a way that benefits our communities. So making sure more people are employed in the sector, making sure that we're contributing to net zero. So I think all of those things, this isn't just about outright growth for growth's sake. We're not really chasing millions and millions of visitors. What we're chasing is kind of the value of those visitors and the contribution they make to the place, because we want that money to stay in the Northeast. So I think that's what I'd like to see. And I think some of the indicators, as I said there, occupancy is up. We know it's still challenging times, some of our attractions, but we're seeing kind of that move on. So I'd hope that if we were doing this time next year, that I was telling you, we were saying we'd added another 500 million to the region. And what I'd also like to see is that kind of spread across the 7 local authorities of the region. And yes, there'll always be concentrations because of business activity, but I think even in this year's data, what you saw is some nuances in that, and it almost narrated that story of we've invested in the visitor economy and now we're seeing the benefit. So I think we use that to say, now if you invest in the visitor economy, you'll see the benefit.
And, speaking of kind of reaping those benefits now, you're acutely aware of how many days we've got left of the Destination Development Partnership. You've got a countdown clock in the corner of your laptop, which is insane. I don't know why you would have done that yourself. But, we've got about 7 months left really now of the initial pilot period. We've touched on some of the opportunities and the challenges. What do you think are, say, the 3 key opportunities now between now and April 2025?
So before I even kind of talk about those 3 opportunities, the one ask, play, whatever you want to call it, is engage. We need our businesses and our stakeholders to really engage with the DDP for many reasons, but one, so they benefit from it. And secondly, so we can lobby on that to continue the work, essentially. But if I was picking on 3 opportunities for the businesses, one will be to take part in new adventures, get your bookable product, make sure you get you visible online, let us drive more people into your business. That will be a real key opportunity. Second one, and linked, is to take part in our travel trade activity. I mentioned we've had those 18 different countries in, but we're probably working with the best part of 200 or 300 different group travel organisers now. So thinking about what you can do in terms of the products you can provide to small groups, right up to large groups, and get involved in that. And then the third one, I could pick on 10 here, is we're running a scheme at the moment, the Green Tourism Business Scheme, which allows business to really kind of get support and become accredited for kind of their contribution to sustainability. You can go through that bronze, silver, gold. It's not as scary as it sounds. I think we're funding 125 places in that. But I am going to cheat, Jonny, and I'm going to take one extra one, which is a really simple one for businesses to do. It takes 10 minutes, but it's to sign up to the EA Visitor Ready scheme. We really want our visitors to feel truly assured that what they're getting is a really good quality, safe, compliant product here in the region. It literally does take 10 minutes for businesses to do. And I would love us to be kind of the first region where our whole business community is visitor ready.
And I think finally, and kind of related to that question really is, I am a visitor economy business owner. I've sat here, I've listened to this data. I think it's really interesting. I think the DDP sounds fantastic, but how is it going to help me right now? And why should I be involved in the greater good of doubling the size of the visitor economy?
Look, everything that the pilot is trying to do is to improve the efficiency, capacity and resource of our businesses. Ultimately, though, if I was sat thinking I'm making beds now and I've got to make people's dinner in 2 hours and then I've got breakfast in the morning, when do you expect me to have time to do this paperwork? I think it is just about making sure that whenever someone is making a choice about where they're going to spend their break or their day out, the Northeast hits that priority list. And from there, that means it's a potential customer for each of our businesses. So I would, it's very much just thinking about it, thinking of us as an additional channel to bring people through that door.
And we started off the podcast with a question about your career and the most important nuggets of information that you gleaned from it. So my last question is, what's the one thing you wish you'd known at the start of your career in tourism?
Wow. That is a brilliant question, to be fair. I think if I was thinking about it then, it would be that I would have truly understood the kind of scale of opportunity in the Northeast. I think I'm from the Northeast, so the accent it's not like people would have to guess. But I think I was one of those people that was like, well, everyone knows about Durham Cathedral. Whether that's arrogance or just a bit of ignorance, I'm not sure. But I think I wish I'd kind of set off on this mission, for want of a better word, back then in terms of we're having the same conversations now we had 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I think now is the time that there's no more second chances. This is the time we put the region on the map.
And that's ultimately the why we're all here, isn't it? It's to put the region on the map and tell that collective story. And like you say, now more than ever, we've got an incredible opportunity to do that, backed up by the data, backed up by the facts and the figures as well, which is really important.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. That was relatively painless, I hope. Not too much for grilling on the numbers. All good. It's good when you are a numbers person as well, because you can kind of tell a story with whereas my brain kind of just goes bleep bloop when I look at anything that looks remotely like maths. So thank you very much for joining us for this first episode of Destination Digest. As I said, we'll have special episodes on all of the different key areas of Destination Northeast England and its work that is ultimately there to help grow your business and grow the value of the visitor economy here in the Northeast. In the meantime, check out destinationnortheastengland.co.uk. There's a boatload of research on there, resources, events you can attend, blogs, news, all of that sort of stuff to really get the most out of the Destination Development Partnership. And of course, make sure you sign up to our newsletters as well. Those are the first place you'll find out about the latest opportunities, data, insights, and everything else you might possibly need from Destination Northeast England. So thank you again to you, Ian.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for listening. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back for another episode very soon.